Hello, and welcome to my channel, Philosophy of Psychiatric Diagnoses. In this video, I'll just introduce who I am and the sort of things I'll be doing on this channel. So who am I? I am an autistic individual. I was diagnosed aged 24, and that is what got me interested in studying psychiatric diagnoses. At the time, I was studying philosophy of science, and so when I got diagnosed, I started taking an interest in autism and psychiatric diagnoses and started reading in philosophy of psychiatry. This then led to a PhD, and I've also done a research fellowship on this, and I've been a lecturer in relation to these issues as well. Most of these have taken place at Lancaster University in the United Kingdom, where I'm currently based. If you're interested in reading some of my work, you can find links to it at samfellows.com, and also if you can't get access to the published versions, a lot of my papers I have preprints of the paper, which is basically virtually the final version which is uploaded to my website. So what topics will be covered? The main topic which I've researched is what are psychiatric diagnoses and are they any good? So, for example, are psychiatric diagnoses real parts of the world or something we've constructed? Are they scientific or are they doing something quite different to science? If they are scientific, are they any good? Are they good science? And if they're not scientific, could they still be good? Much of this relates to concerns over psychiatric diagnoses and how there's trends of wanting to replace psychiatric diagnoses with alternatives. So a lot of this involves comparing current psychiatric diagnoses to alternatives to consider which might be better or whether they could both coexist. I also work on experts by experience in psychiatric research, so people with psychiatric diagnoses researching their diagnosis. So if you have somebody who is, for example, autistic, in what sense can we go from their experience of being autistic to producing scientific knowledge about that psychiatric diagnosis, about autism? Does this produce better science than traditional science? Does it produce worse science? Or does it just do something that is different? I'm also interested in self-diagnosis in psychiatry, where you diagnose yourself. The idea is that somebody is using their experience of who they are and the knowledge of who they are to establish that they have a particular psychiatric diagnosis. So, is this more accurate than official diagnosis? Is it less accurate? Is it accurate in different ways? I think this is especially interesting because a lot of advocates think that it's legitimate to diagnose with a psychiatric diagnosis even if you do not meet the diagnostic criteria, because the concern is that the diagnostic criteria is flawed. So you can diagnose as autistic even if you do not actually meet the official diagnostic criteria for autism. If people are using their experience and knowledge of themselves to effectively generate alternative psychiatric diagnoses, are these going to be better or worse or just in some way different to official diagnoses? I'm also interested in neurodiversity. So, what is neurodiversity and how should we go about practically implementing it? What would constitute better and worse ways of implementing neurodiversity? And finally, I have views on autism, being an autistic person. So, in what ways do I think descriptions of autism are accurate, and in what ways do I think they might be inaccurate? What form will these videos take? So some videos will just simply be summaries of my published papers. Take a paper I've published and turn it into a video describing the arguments of the paper. Other ones will just be ideas that I'm developing. So if I'm working on a particular topic, I do not intend to turn into papers, or if I intend to turn them into a paper, it could be many years before I get round to them. So just some provisional thoughts on a particular topic. And finally, of conferences and workshops. Thank you for listening.